The story opens in a sprawling private school in the heart of New York City, a place of glass halls, manicured gardens, and classrooms filled with the children of CEOs, politicians, and foreign dignitaries. Field was with tada, with played on sod, with hunda tada. So rowd. I'll span on. The only daughter of Alexander Kensington, a billionaire tech tycoon whose name carried power in every boardroom across the globe, Sophia, just 19, walked through those gleaming halls with her head bowed, clutching her books. On the outside, she looked perfect. Designer clothes, diamond-studded earrings, and a chauffeur waiting for her after school. But beneath that polished exterior, she was drowning. For months, she had failed every exam. Math, science, even literature. Subjects her tutors said she should excel at with her resources. Every time grades were announced, whispers filled the room. She has private tutors, unlimited resources, and the best teachers money can buy. Students giggled, teachers sighed, and the gossip spread like wildfire. Sophia wasn't lazy. She stayed up late at night, staring at her books, trying to memorize formulas and paragraphs. But nothing seemed to click. The harder she pushed, the more lost she felt, as though her mind was a maze with no exit. Her father, Alexander, grew increasingly frustrated. To him, failure wasn't an option. "Do you have any idea how much money I've poured into your education?" he snapped one evening, slamming his glass of scotch onto the marble counter. "You're supposed to be the future of this family, and you can't even pass a simple math test." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that crying in front of her father only made him angrier. "I'll do better," she whispered, her voice trembling. But the truth was, she didn't know how. The next day, during a surprise quiz in math, Sophia stared blankly at the paper. Numbers blurred together, formulas felt like foreign languages. Her classmates scribbled away confidently while she sat frozen. When the results came back, her paper bore a bright red F across the top. Again, her teacher sighed and pulled her aside. "Sophia, you have potential, but you're not learning the fundamentals. You're trying to jump into advanced material without understanding the basics. That's not how learning works." Humiliation burned inside her. She left the classroom. She heard someone whisper, "She's dumb. Money can't buy brains." Sophia walked out of the building, tears streaming, her chest tight with frustration. She didn't want to go home and face her father's disappointment again. So instead, she wandered into the city streets, away from the polished campus, and into the rougher side of town. That's when she saw him. Sitting on the steps of a worn-down community library was a boy about her age, his clothes faded and patched, but his posture proud. A stack of old textbooks sat beside him, and in his hands he scribbled equations into a battered notebook. His name was Ethan, though she didn't know it yet. Sophia paused, curiosity piqued. How could someone who looked like he had so little be so engrossed in learning? She approached hesitantly, wiping her tears. "Excuse me," she said softly. The boy looked up, his dark eyes sharp and intelligent. "Yeah, are you studying?" she asked, almost embarrassed by the question. He chuckled, trying to, "Yeah, got a scholarship exam coming up. Mad science, all of it." He held up his notebook, filled with neat handwritten solutions. "Not easy, but I'm getting there." Something about his confidence stirred something inside. "Her? Can I ask you something?" she blurted out. "How do you do it? How do you understand all this?" Ethan studied her for a moment. "You don't start at the top," he said simply. "You start at the bottom. Basics first. You build, step by step, until it makes sense. Most people try to skip steps. Why they fail?" Sophia froze. Those words pierced her like lightning. Basics first. Start from scratch. That was exactly what she'd been doing wrong. For the first time in months, a tiny spark of hope flickered inside her. Sophia stood there, staring at Ethan as though he had just unlocked the door to a secret world she'd been locked out of her whole life. His words echoed in her head. You don't start at the top. You start at the bottom. For years, tutors had overwhelmed her with complex equations, endless essays and advanced concepts, but never once had someone told her it. It was okay to slow down, to start again. Can you help me? She asked softly, her voice almost breaking. Ethan raised an eyebrow. He glanced at her expensive coat, the gleaming diamond earrings, and her polished nails. She looked like someone who had never faced struggle, someone who probably had people doing everything for her. You want me to teach you? He asked, skepticism clear in his voice. Yes, Sophia said, desperation slipping through her usually calm exterior. I don't understand anything anymore. I fail every test. I've tried tutors, but they don't. They don't make sense. But what you said, it felt real. Please. Ethan studied her for a long moment, as though deciding if she was serious or just mocking him. Finally, he sighed. Fine, but I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If you want to learn, you're going to have to work harder than you ever have before. No excuses. Sophia nodded eagerly. I'll do whatever it takes. That evening, for the first time in her life, Sophia sat cross-legged on the cold library floor, surrounded by old, yellowed books. Ethan pulled out a tattered math workbook and handed it to her. Yes. We're starting with fractions, he said. Sophia blinked. Fractions? But that's elementary level, Ethan finished.
Exactly.
If you can't do this, how do you expect to solve equations? Basics first. Always. Sophia swallowed her pride and opened the book. Paper hesitant, but Ethan's calm voice guided her. What's 1/2 plus 1/2? She thought for a second. 1. Correct. His lips twitched into the faintest smile. So you're not as hopeless as you think. For hours, Ethan patiently explained step by step. Fractions, decimals, multiplication, things Sophia had long forgotten. At first, she stumbled over every problem, her frustration bubbling. This is stupid. Should know this already. Stop thinking about what you should know, Ethan said firmly. Focus on what you can learn right now. Shame doesn't solve problems. Effort does. One had ever spoken to her like that. Not her tutors, not her father, not her classmates. They either pitied her or pressured her. Ethan just told her the truth. Strangely, it made her want to keep going. By the time the library lights flickered, signaling closing time, Sophia had completed her first full page of problems without mistakes. She stared at the paper, pride swelling in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of confidence as they walked outside. The cold night air brushing against them, she turned to Ethan. Thank you, really, you don't know how much this means to me. He shrugged, trying to downplay it. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. If you quit tomorrow, all of this will be useless. I won't quit, Sophia said with conviction she didn't even know she had. Ethan smirked. We'll see. The next morning, Sophia walked into school different. She wasn't magically smarter overnight, but she carried herself with a quiet determination. While other students laughed at her usual mistakes, she remembered Ethan's words. Focus on what you can learn right now. That night, she returned. To the library, Ethan was already waiting, textbooks open. This time it was word problems, and when she got one wrong, she felt the familiar sting of failure. But instead of spiraling, she asked, Can you explain again? Ethan leaned closer, showing her step by step. And when she finally got it, she smiled a real, unforced smile she hadn't worn in months. As days turned into weeks, a routine formed every evening. Sophia slipped away from her chauffeur and bodyguards, sneaking into the little community library. Ethan pushed her harder than any tutor ever had, but in a way that made her grow, not shrink. He never mocked her, but he never let her settle either. One night, after solving a particularly tricky problem, she whispered, I feel like I'm actually learning. Ethan looked at her, his eyes softer than usual. That's because you are. You just needed to start from scratch. And though Sophia didn't say it aloud, she knew in that moment her life was beginning to change. The morning sunlight, streamed into Sophia's penthouse, sweet as her maid knocked gently at the door. "Miss Sophia, it's time for school." Sophia would have groaned, buried her face under silk sheets, and dragged her feet to class, knowing another day of embarrassment awaited her. But today was different. She sat up quickly, her workbook from last night still resting on the desk beside her. Neatly written equations filled the pages her own work. For the first time, she wasn't dreading school. She was curious. At breakfast, her father, Mr. Harrington, sat across from her, skimming financial reports while sipping coffee. "Sophia, I heard you have another test this week," he said without looking up. His tone was calm, but beneath it lay years of disappointment. "Yes," she answered simply, her voice steady. "Good," he muttered, flipping a page. "Let's hope you don't embarrass me again." Sophia's chest tightened, but instead of crumbling, she thought of Ethan's words. Shame doesn't solve problems. Effort does. She quietly picked up her school bag and left the table, ignoring her father's cold gaze. In class, Sophia sat straighter than usual. When her teacher handed out a short quiz, she felt the familiar wave of panic. But then she remembered Ethan's method. Break the problem down, one step at a time. She scribbled carefully, her pencil scratching across T. Sophia ignored them. For once, she didn't care what they thought. All she cared about was that Ethan was right she could learn. That evening at the library, she shoved the quiz paper in Ethan's hands with a grin. "Look, 75. Ethan looked at it, then at her beaming face. "Not bad," he said casually, but Sophia could see the hint of pride in his eyes. "Not bad," she laughed. "This is the highest I've ever scored." All right. "All right, good. Job? But don't stop here. One test doesn't mean you're done. You've got a mountain to climb." Sophia nodded, determination in her eyes. "Then let's climb it." As the weeks rolled by, Sophia's routine became unshakable. She would attend school, endure the whispers, and then spend her evenings in the library with Ethan. He taught her not just math, but how to think, how to approach problems logically instead of panicking. He showed her shortcuts, tricks, and most importantly, patience. But as she grew, she began to notice Ethan more. His clothes were always a little too worn, his shoes scuffed, his backpack patched at the seams. One evening, as he packed his things, a slip of paper fell out. Sophia picked it up before he could snatch it back. It was a utility bill overdue. Her heart clenched, looked at him, suddenly realizing the truth. "Ethan, you're struggling, aren't you?" He stiffened. "It's none of your business. But you're helping me so much. And all this time, you're barely managing yourself." His jaw tightened. "I don't need your pity. I can take care of myself. Just focus on your studies." Sophia didn't press further, but the thought lingered in her mind. While she lived in luxury, Ethan was fighting just to keep the lights on at home. And yet he gave his time and patience to her without asking for anything in return. At school, her progress didn't go unnoticed. Her teachers began to praise her improvement. One even pulled her aside and said, "Sophia, I don't know what changed, but keep it up. You're proving everyone wrong." Her classmates, however, weren't pleased. Odd, a girl named Vanessa, who had always been at the top, sneered at her during lunch. "Don't get too comfortable, Sophia. One lucky test doesn't mean you belong." "Here," Sophia almost retorted, but instead, she smiled faintly. "I don't need to prove myself to her," she thought. "I just need to keep moving forward." That night, she told Ethan about it, and he laughed. "Let them talk. Success is the best way to shut people up." Sophia grinned. "Then I'll just keep succeeding." But little did she know, her success was about to collide with Ethan's struggles in a way neither of them could have imagined. Because as Sophia's grades climbed, her father began to notice. And when he discovered who was behind her transformation, everything would change. Sophia's grades continued to rise steadily. Each week brought a new quiz, and each quiz brought a higher score than the last. From barely scraping a pass to achieving 80s and even touching the 90s, Sophia was no longer the girl who failed every test. At first, her father, Mr. Harrington, dismissed it as luck or her teachers being lenient. But when the principal called one afternoon, congratulating him on Sophia's remarkable turnaround. He could no longer ignore it. That evening, as he sat in his expansive office overlooking the city, he summoned Sophia. She walked in nervously, clutching her books. "Sit," he commanded. His voice was calm but sharp, the kind that always made her feel like a child about to be scolded. "I've been informed," he said slowly, "that you are no longer failing your classes." Sophia hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, father. I've been working hard." He leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. Working hard or being helped? His eyes narrowed. Who is behind this sudden miracle? Sophia's heart pounded. Should she lie? Should she tell him about Ethan? She decided to tell the truth. "There's a boy. His name is Ethan. He's been tutoring me and guiding me." The billionaire's eyes hardened instantly. "A boy? Yes, father. He's brilliant." He explains things in a way that Mr. Harrington raised his hand, cutting her off. "What's his background?" Sophia bit her lip. He's from a different part of town. He doesn't come from money, but that's enough," her father snapped. "A poor boy meddling in my daughter's education. You realize how this looks?" Sophia's chest tightened. "How it looks? Father, he's the reason. I've improved. Believes in me when no one else does. Not even you." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Mr. Harrington's face darkened. "You dare speak to me like that?" His voice thundered, echoing against the marble. "Walls, you are my daughter, and you will not associate with people who do not belong in our world." Sophia's hands trembled, but she clenched them into fists. "If you take Ethan away from me, you're taking away the only chance I have at becoming more than just your spoiled daughter." Her father's jaw tightened. He had built empires with his decisions, and he was not used to being defied, especially not by his own child. The next day, Mr. Harrington had his driver follow Sophia after school. Instead of returning home, she slipped into the city library. Just as she had every evening inside, Ethan was already waiting, his notebook open, ready to start. He smiled when he saw her. "Ready for round 2 of algebra?" But before Sophia could answer, the tall shadow of her father fell over the table. The entire library seemed to hold its breath. "Are you Ethan?" Mr. Harrington's voice was cold. Authoritative. Ethan stood slowly, confused but composed. "Yes, sir, and you are?" "I am Richard Harrington," he said, his tone laced with pride. "Sophia's father." Ethan nodded politely. "It's nice to meet you, sir." Mr. Harrington's eyes scanned him, the worn clothes, the patched backpack, the tired but sharp eyes. He felt a surge of disdain. "I understand you've been tutoring my daughter," Mr. Harrington said, "and while I appreciate your effort, this arrangement ends today." Sophia shot up from her chair. "Father, no, you can't do this." Ethan frowned slightly. "With all due respect, sir, Sophia has been working incredibly hard. She's making real progress." "I don't care," Mr. Harrington said flatly. "My daughter will not be." "Indebted to someone like you?" The words cut deep. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. "Someone like me?" "Yes," Mr. Harrington replied coldly. "A boy who has no place in our world. Maybe clever, but cleverness without status is worthless. Stay away from my daughter." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Father, please." But Ethan held up his hand, stopping her. His voice was calm, but firm. "Sophia, it's all right. This is what he wants?" "No," Sophia cried. "This isn't fair. The reason I'm finally succeeding." Mr. Harrington turned to leave, his presence commanding even as he walked away. "Sophia, we'll discuss this at home. Ethan, I'll ensure you're not troubled again." The implication was clear, a threat wrapped in politeness. As his footsteps faded, Sophia collapsed back into her chair, her body trembling. Ethan sat quietly, staring at the floor, for the first time since they'd met. There was silence between them. Finally, Ethan spoke softly. "Maybe he's right. Maybe I don't belong in your world." Sophia's head snapped up, her eyes fierce. "Don't you dare say that. You're the only person who ever believed in me. And I'm not giving up on you." But deep down, both of them knew Meister Harrington wasn't going to let this go so easily. Their worlds had collided, and the storm was just beginning. That night, the Harrington mansion was colder than ever. The chandeliers sparkled, the The polished marble shone, yet Sophia felt like a prisoner inside its walls. Her father's words echoed in her head. Stay away from him. Dinner was silent. The long dining table stretched between her and her father, a gulf wider than wealth itself. Her fork scraped against her plate, but she couldn't eat. Finally, Mr. Harrington spoke. Starting tomorrow, you will study with private tutors I've arranged. They are the best in the city. No more library visits. Sophia's heart sank. Father, they don't teach the way Ethan does. They don't understand me. They don't need to, he snapped. They are professionals, not strays off the street. Sophia's knuckles whitened around her fork. He's not a stray. He's a better teacher than all of them combined. Her father's eyes flashed with anger. Enough, Sophia. This conversation is over. But for Sophia, it was the next day. Instead of heading straight home after school, Sophia waited until the driver dropped her at the mansion gates. Then, as soon as the car drove off, she slipped out through a side path and walked briskly toward the bus stop. Her heart raced. She had never taken public transport alone before, but tonight she had no choice. When she finally arrived at the library, Ethan was already there, surrounded by stacks of books. His eyes widened when he saw her, Sophia. What are you doing here? I thought your dad. He doesn't have to know, she interrupted, sliding into the seat across from him. I won't let him control everything. I want to learn. And I want to learn from you. Ethan looked uneasy. Sophia, this could get you into serious trouble. He doesn't just dislike me, he'll crush me if he finds out I disobeyed him. Sophia leaned forward, determination blazing in her eyes. Then let him try. I'm not afraid. You shouldn't be either. Ethan studied her face. For the first time, he saw not the spoiled billionaire's daughter, but a young woman ready to fight for her own future. He sighed, then smiled faintly. All right, but we'll have to be careful. And so, their secret lessons began. They met late in the evenings, long after her father thought she was asleep. Sometimes at the library, sometimes in quiet cafes, and sometimes even on the rooftop of Ethan's small apartment building, where the city lights stretched endlessly in the distance. Each session pushed Sophia harder than the last. Ethan made her redo entire chapters, solve equations until midnight, and write essays that he tore apart and made her start again. Why are you so strict with me? She groaned one night, collapsing onto her notebook. Because no one else ever was, Ethan replied. Your world let you fail because they expected you to. I won't. I know you can do better. Sophia smiled despite her exhaustion. No one had ever pushed her like this. No one had ever cared this much. But secrets never stay hidden forever. One evening, after another long session, Sophia crept quietly into the mansion. She tiptoed past the grand staircase only to freeze. Her father was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, eyes blazing. Where were you? His voice was ice. Sophia's throat tightened. I went for a walk. A walk. His voice rose. Do you take me for a fool? My men followed you. You been sneaking around with that boy again? Sophia's chest pounded. She had been caught. Father, please, she began, but he cut her off. You've disobeyed me for the last time. If you won't stay away from him, then I'll make sure he stays away from you. Sophia's blood ran cold. What do you mean, Mr. Harrington's face was unreadable. I'll handle it. By tomorrow, you'll never see Ethan again. Her stomach dropped. She could almost hear the finality in his tone. That night, Sophia didn't sleep. She paced her room, tears streaking her face. Her father wasn't bluffing. He had the power to ruin lives with a single phone call. Ethan wasn't just at risk of losing her. He was at risk of losing everything. As dawn broke, Sophia clenched her fists. If her father was going to wage war against Ethan, then she would fight back. She had no idea how, but she knew one thing. She wasn't letting Ethan go. The morning sun poured into the Harrington mansion, but Sophia's world felt darker than ever. She hadn't closed her eyes all night, her mind trapped in one terrifying thought. What if father destroys Ethan's life today? At breakfast, her father sat calmly with a newspaper, sipping his coffee as if nothing had happened. But Sophia knew him too well. When he was calm, it meant something ruthless was already in motion. Finally, she spoke. "What are you planning? To do to him?" Mr. Harrington didn't look up. "I don't need to explain myself. The boy's a distraction, and distractions are eliminated. That's all you need to know, Father." She slammed her hands on the table, her voice trembling with fury. "He's not a distraction. He's the only one who believes in me." That got his attention. Slowly, he lowered his newspaper, his eyes cold as steel. "Then you are weaker than I thought. If you need him to succeed, you'll never survive in my world." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Maybe I don't want your world anymore." The silence that followed was suffocating. Her father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence was a threat. Later that day, Ethan discovered the storm for himself. He returned home from his shift at the bookstore only to find two men in expensive suits waiting outside his apartment building. Their black car, sleek and intimidating, was parked by the curb. Ethan Miller. One of them asked curtly. "Yes," Ethan replied warily. The taller man handed him an envelope. "From Mr. Harrington, consider it a suggestion." The men didn't wait for an answer. They turned and left as quickly as they had appeared. Ethan's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a staggering sum, more money than he had ever seen in his life. And beneath it, a single line typed on expensive stationery: "Stay away from my daughter, permanently." Ethan's chest tightened. His instincts screamed at him to rip it up, but another voice whispered, "Do you really think you can fight a man like him?" That evening, Sophia rushed to the library to meet Ethan, only to find him sitting in silence, staring at the check. Her heart dropped. "What's that?" Ethan looked up, his face torn. "Your father came after me. He wants me gone." Breath caught. She grabbed the check and crumpled it in her hands. "You're not taking this. I won't let him buy you off." But Ethan's eyes were full of doubt. "Sophia, he's right about one thing. I can't compete with his world. He has power, money, influence, things I'll never have. I stay, I'll just make life harder for you." Sophia's voice cracked. "Ethan, don't say that. You're the only reason I've made it this far. You can't leave me now." Closed his eyes, pained. "Sophia, what if loving you ruins your life?" Her hands trembled as she reached. "For his? Then let it ruin me, 'cause life without you isn't worth anything." For a long moment, Ethan just stared at her, his heart battling his fears. Then, slowly, he pulled her into an embrace. "I don't care what he throws at me," Ethan whispered fiercely. "I'm not walking away. Not now. Not ever." But Mr. Harrington was not done. The very next day, Ethan arrived at the bookstore, only to be told he was fired. His manager couldn't even look him in the eye. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Your name's been blacklisted. No one will hire you. Not in this city." It was ruthless, but it was devastating. And it was exactly what Mr. Harrington had promised. By evening, Ethan stood outside the library, rain pouring down his belongings in a box. Sophia found him there, soaked and shivering. "What happened?" She gasped. He gave a bitter laugh. "Your father happened. He's not just trying to separate us. He's trying to destroy me." Sophia's stomach twisted with rage. She grabbed his hand, her voice steady despite the storm around them. "Then we fight. Together. He may have money, but he doesn't have us. And I swear, Ethan, I'm not letting him win." And in that moment, despite the chaos, Ethan believed her. The storm had passed, but inside Sophia, another one brewed. She was done crying, done hiding, done being her father's obedient daughter. The next morning, she walked into Harrington Enterprises with Ethan by her side. Heads turned the moment they entered. Employees whispered, some with pity, others with admiration. After all, everyone knew who Ethan was by Natha. Poor boy who dared to stand next to the billionaire's daughter. "Miss Harrington," one of the assistants stammered nervously. "Your father is in a meeting." "Good," Sophia interrupted, her voice firm. "He's about to get another one." She pushed open the grand boardroom doors. Inside, a dozen executives sat around a massive oak table. At the head, Mr. Harrington, cool and commanding, was in the middle of a presentation. His sharp gaze flickered when he saw Sophia storm in. "Sophia," he said flatly, "this is neither the time nor place." "On the contrary," Sophia replied, her voice echoing across the room, "this is the perfect time." The executives shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. Ethan stood quietly at the door, his presence both defiant and protective. Sophia took a deep breath. "I know what you did. You tried to buy him off, then you destroyed his job, his name, his reputation. You've spent your life crushing people who stood in your way, but not this time, not him." Her father's face hardened, but his eyes revealed something, a flicker of surprise. "You think you can stand here and lecture me?" he said coldly. "I built everything you see. Without me, you are nothing." "No," Sophia said firmly, her voice breaking but strong. "Without Ethan, I am nothing. You think money makes you powerful? It doesn't. Power is what he gave. Me confidence, discipline, belief. He taught me more in weeks than all your tutors did in years." The room was silent. Some executives exchanged glances, clearly shaken. Mr. Harrington leaned back, trying to mask his unease. "Sophia, don't be foolish. You think this boy can protect you from me, from this world?" Sophia's chin lifted. "No, but I can protect him from you. And if you force me to choose, I'll walk away from this family, this company, this fortune. I'll walk away from everything." A collective gasp filled the room. Mr. Harrington's mask slipped. For the first time, he looked rattled. His daughter, the one he had groomed to take over his empire, was willing to give it all up for a boy with nothing. Ethan finally stepped forward. His voice was steady, respectful, but filled with conviction. "Sir, I never wanted your money, your company, or your world. I only wanted her to believe in herself, and she does, whether you approve or not." The weight of his words settled over the boardroom like thunder. That evening, Sophia's rebellion made headlines. Harrington heiress defies father in boardroom showdown. Sophia Harrington chooses love over empire. The city buzzed with gossip, admiration, and disbelief. For years, the Harrington name had meant untouchable authority. But now, everyone saw a crack in the empire caused, not by rivals, but by a daughter who dared to speak her truth. At home, Mr. Harrington sat alone in his study, staring at a glass of whiskey. He'd faced tycoons, politicians, and competitors. But nothing had shaken him like his daughter's words. Had he been wrong all along? Meanwhile, Sophia and Ethan sat on the library steps, exhausted but smiling. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know," she whispered, "for a poor boy, you sure know how to turn a billionaire's world upside down." Ethan chuckled softly. "What? And for a billionaire's daughter, you're not so bad at fighting." Back. The night sky stretched above them, and for the first time in years, Sophia felt free. But neither of them knew Mr. Harrington was not finished yet. If anything, the battle had only just begun. The following morning, before the sun had fully risen, Ethan's phone buzzed with an unknown number. When he answered, a familiar cold voice filled his ear. "Meet me at the downtown headquarters, 9 a.m. sharp. Come alone." It was Mr. Harrington. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but he knew he couldn't refuse. Something in the man's tone told him this wasn't just another threat, it was something more. At 9 a.m. Ethan walked into the towering glass building, dwarfed by its sheer scale. Employees whispered as he passed by, some in awe, others in disbelief. Mr. Harrington was waiting for him in the top-floor conference room. "No board members this time, just him come collected and dangerous. You've caused quite a stir." "Boy," Harrington began, his hands folded neatly on the polished table, "my daughter defied me for you. That's never happened before. You may think you've won something, but you haven't." Ethan stood tall, unflinching. "I didn't come here to win anything, only to be honest with her." Harrington studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he leaned back and smirked. "Good answer. But words don't impress me. Results do. So here's what's going to happen." He slid a thick folder across the table. Ethan opened it and found pages of financial reports, business plans, and contracts. I built this empire because I know how to spot weakness and potential, Harrington said. If you truly want to stand beside my daughter, prove to me. You're not just a distraction. Prove to me you're capable of building something. It's the only way I'll ever consider you worthy of her. Ethan frowned, scanning the documents. What exactly are you asking me to do? Harrington's eyes gleamed. I'm giving you one of my failing subsidiaries. A company on the brink of collapse. You have 3 months to turn it around. If you succeed, I'll step back. If you fail, he leaned forward, his voice like a blade. You walk away from Sophia, forever. That night, Ethan told Sophia everything. She was furious. He's trying to break you, she shouted. You don't owe him anything. You don't have to prove yourself to him or anyone. Ethan took her hand gently. Maybe not. But if I don't try, he'll never stop coming after us. This isn't about proving myself to him. It's about proving that we can survive in his world on our terms. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, but she nodded. She had seen that look in Ethan's face before, the same look he had when he pushed her to start over from scratch. Determined. Unshakable. Then I'm with you, she whispered. Every step of the way, the next few weeks were brutal. The company Harrington handed Ethan was a sinking ship. Piles of debt, corrupt managers, outdated systems. Everyone had already written it off as a lost cause, but Ethan refused to give in. He spent nights at the office, poring over every report. He met with workers, listened to their grievances, and inspired them with his sincerity. Slowly, people began to rally behind him. Sophia, true to her word, was by his side, she learned. About operations, helped him with presentations, and even made coffee runs when exhaustion weighed on him. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the heiress of Harrington Enterprises. She was simply a partner, building something from the ground up, and against all odds, the numbers began to shift. The company that had been losing millions started, showing sparks of revival. 3 months later, Ethan stood in front of Mr. Harrington again, this time with a confident smile and a binder of results. I don't expect you to like me, Ethan said firmly, but you can't deny this. The company you gave me isn't just surviving, it's thriving. Mr. Harrington flipped through the pages. His face gave nothing away, but deep down, his pride was shaken. He had expected Ethan to crumble. Instead, the boy had done what even his seasoned executives had failed to do. Sophia sat beside Ethan, her hand resting over his, her eyes locked on her father's. So, she said softly, what do you have to say now? For the first time, Mr. Harrington didn't have an immediate answer, and that silence was louder than any argument. But this battle was far from over. The boardroom was silent, save for the faint hum of the city below. Mr. Harrington closed the binder of Ethan's results with deliberate slowness, his fingers tapping on the cover as though weighing every possibility. At last he spoke. You've surprised me. Few men could have done what you just did. But numbers, profits, and reports, those are surface-level victories. What matters most in this world is loyalty, and loyalty is tested under fire. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Harrington leaned forward, his eyes sharp and calculating. If you want to remain in my daughter's life, there is one more test. Not business, not money. Something far more personal. You'll have to face the one thing I've spent my entire life running. From Sophia stiffened. Father, this is ridiculous. Quiet, Harrington snapped, his voice heavy with authority. He turned back to Ethan. I grew up in the slums of Brighton. I starved, I fought, and I swore I'd never let anyone see that weakness again. But it still haunts me. The place I came from is where you come from. Poor, desperate, invisible. If you want me to believe you can protect my daughter, then you'll walk back into that world with me. We'll stand where I once stood and prove that you won't let it break you. Ethan's chest tightened. This wasn't just a challenge. It was an unveiling of the billionaire's buried shame. Sophia clutched Ethan's arm. You don't have to do this. But Ethan looked into her eyes and shook his head. I do. If I walk away now, he'll never stop doubting me. This isn't about a myth, it's about proving that where I come from doesn't define me. The next evening, Harrington's sleek black car pulled up at the edge of a crumbling neighborhood rows of abandoned factories. Shattered glass windows, graffiti, sprawled across the walls. It was a graveyard of lost dreams. "This," Harrington said bitterly as he stepped out, "is where I was born. Where I nearly died." Ethan followed him, the air heavy with decay and memories. Children with hollow eyes peeked out from alleyways. The smell of rust and smoke clung to the air. It reminded Ethan of his own childhood days when food was scarce. Nights when the cold bit into his bones. Harrington's voice hardened. "Here, people don't care who you are. They only care if you can fight to survive. So let's see if you can." Before Ethan could respond, a group of rough-looking men emerged from the shadows. Their clothes were torn, their eyes sharp with suspicion and hunger. Old Man Harrington once sneered, "Didn't think you'd come back here? And who's the pretty boy you've brought with you?" Ethan realized instantly this wasn't a coincidence. Harrington had set this up. Sophia gasped, but Harrington didn't flinch. "Handle it," he said coldly. Staring at Ethan, "or you're not worthy of her." The men circled, their voices taunting. Ethan's pulse pounded, but he refused to back down. He remembered the lessons hardship had taught him: stand tall, never show fear. "I don't want to fight you," Ethan said calmly, "but I'm not afraid of you either. I've lived where you live. I know what it's like to have nothing. If you're looking for someone to break, it won't be me." The leader sneered, lunging forward with a shove. Ethan staggered but planted his feet again. His eyes burned with unshakable resolve. "Try me again," Ethan warned, "and you'll see I don't fall." For a tense moment, it seemed violence was inevitable. But something in Ethan's tone, in his unyielding stance, made the men hesitate. They exchanged glances, then one by one stepped back. The leader gave a low laugh. "You've got fire, kid. More than most who come through here. We'll let you walk today. But remember, respect isn't given, it's earned." With that, they melted back into the shadows. Sophia rushed to Ethan, tears streaming. "That was insane. You could have been hurt." But Harrington just stood there, silent. For the first time in his life, he saw a piece of his own past reflected in another man, not fear, not weakness, but defiance against the odds. He looked at Ethan, his jaw tight. "You didn't back down?" "No," Ethan said quietly. "Because I've lived that life, and I swore I'd rise above it. Why Sophia deserves a man who won't bend when the world tries to break him. I intend to be that man." Harrington's lips pressed into a thin line, but in his eyes, just for a moment there, was something Ethan had never seen before: respect.